Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video. This one is going to be based on a series of interviews the narrative team has done about Lightfall and the following year. I just finished giving the Destiny summary accounts a big lecture on giving credit, so I will make sure to give credit to GamesRadar, which is the article I'm reading here. And reacting to. I know True Vanguard just did a big video about reaction videos too. This is by Austin Wood. I will have a link to it in the description. I was not on this roundtable, but a number of outlets were, and there are some interesting things brought up about the story here and how this is the title here is Bungie responds to criticisms of Lightfall story. We aren't done giving answers. Okay, so this is a lot in reaction to the criticism that Lightfall did not really explain its narrative very well. It had this whole thing about the Veil, and then the Veil was never explained. So far in Season of the Deep, the Veil has been explained to a certain extent. The Veil has been a main fixture of what I would say is the most important cutscene in Destiny history, given its relationship to the Darkness and the Traveler. And then we have this weekly Veil explanation thing that takes place in the little computer terminal by the Veil. Easy to miss because it's way in the bottom of the Neomuna map. But every week there's a new lore entry. I don't know when those are going to stop. I know the seasonal story is over, but there might be a new one tomorrow anyway. Because it's just kind of like a radio entry from Maya Sundaresh's wife talking about how they studied the Veil and used it to create Neomuna and its energies and things. So it's expanding through that. So we will see what they say about stuff here. So this is Nico Stevens. All right, so it used to be we'd kind of nod to what was going to happen in the next season, and then you jump into it, and it would be a whole sort of new story with a chain link between the previous one and this one. Begin senior narrative designer Nico Stevens. Now I would say we are at the point where the events of Season 21 lead directly into the events of Season 22. We're building the path to the final shape, right? Tom Barnesworth. Oh, it's Tom. This is a 10-year saga, and at this point, everything is pointing toward the conclusion in the final shape. These are some of the most serialized and interconnected seasons we've ever done, senior narrative designer Robert Brooks adds. Just narratively, I think there's more swing toward the fences in that regard. The interconnection between annual releases and seasons is kind of a chain link, and this year is different than that. Normally we ramp up to an expansion and then we start new stuff with the seasons that come after it. With this one, Defiance and Deep are kind of like the fallout from Lightfall. Okay, so I'll stop here just to talk about this a little bit. So we do have a situation now where this is confirmation, I think pretty obviously, that Season 22 is going to be about the concept of resurrecting Savathun. I've previously wondered if it's going to take place maybe at the beginning of the season, where we just, like in the opening cutscene, we let Imaru come and resurrect Savathun. I would kind of prefer that to some sort of 8-week-long process where we do some sort of elaborate resurrection ritual, which really should not be necessary, given that she's just needs to be rezzed by a ghost. And then we can have Savathun for the duration of the season. So that is something that was leading directly into things here. Season of Defiance, I don't know if I feel like that was the aftermath of Lightfall in the same sense. It felt kind of disconnected from Lightfall, and this is the season that everyone theorized was not really supposed to happen because Amanda Holliday was supposed to die in the opening cutscene, and Lightfall wasn't supposed to exist. Like, Bungie is not going to confirm in any of this that Lightfall was added later because the final shape was pushed out, but I don't know if I would say that Defiance felt super connected to Lightfall. I would say Season of the Deep feels at least a little more connected to Lightfall as like kind of the aftermath of the events of that. Even still, I'm not 100% sure, Sloane coming back after Beyond Light sunsetting, is that related to the most recent expansion? It reminds me of when Saint came back and you have to like catch up on everything that happened, and she's like, wait, we're allied with the Cabal and it's fallen now, what's going on? So I don't know if these necessarily feel like super connected to Lightfall in the traditional sense, but now it appears the next two seasons they're saying are going to be the run-up to Final Shape. Obviously, Savathun resurrecting and telling us how to get through the portal. That's pretty important because we need to go through the portal to get to the Final Shape. The Final Shape trailer has already told us that we will get through the portal and see Cade on the other side. Like, I don't know what else that trailer is supposed to mean with the big portal in the sky and Ikora and Cade right there, but I guess we'll see. All right, we'll keep going. There's a lot of narrative threads that were left very intentionally unresolved to dig into and expand upon and feel the impact of. And then from 22 and 23 onward, it's the ramp up and lead into the dive of the Final Shape. It's a very different shape than what we're used to, so some of the narrative arcs might be done in a different way, and that's very intentional. Writing something as a reaction is just not physically possible. Season of the Deep was in production before Lightfall released, and because Destiny 2 content is developed well in advance. Okay, so for the most part, the arcs were there and have been there, and the plan was basically in the shape we were making it. It was the idea that the season would be able to take the things that were there, the threads that were set up, and kind of follow them through to their natural course. I believe that for stuff like the cutscene, certainly, that has a big role for the Veil. I'm less convinced about the weekly radio messages from Miles Universe's wife. It's like Chiara Isu. I can't remember her actual name. That is something where there was one mission at the beginning, reusing a lot of stuff, just Vex waves in 3 areas. There's only one combat mission at all, and then you get one gun that was in the Lightfall key art that you now get from this mission. It's a good gun. I like it. And then each week, it's just voice work, mostly from a completely new character and a little bit from Osiris and Nimbus. Yeah, it's Nimbus. I don't know. Like, that strikes me as a little bit of an after-the-fact kind of thing. Like, maybe moving up some lore books into voice work. I can't prove any of that, but that's what it feels like to me. And even if this is, like, the answer and Bungie was trying to leave the end of Lightfall intentionally vague and then expand on Lightfall throughout the course of the coming year and explain the Veil later, like, I still don't think that was a good decision. I think everyone left Lightfall kind of scratching their heads, and it did not have the same kind of very impactful narrative arc that we saw with other expansions. The Witch Queen obviously had the huge reveal about Savathun and how she died and got resurrected by the Traveler instead of stealing the light. That was a great kind of climax to the story. Even Beyond Light had the finale of that was Aramis and her devotion to the Traveler, like that kind of backfiring, and not the Traveler, sorry, the Pyramids, and getting stasis and being frozen. The Lightfall arc was not the same thing. It spent the whole time talking about the Veil, and by the end, you knew essentially nothing about the Veil. I think there was some good explanation for the Veil that's come in this season, but the general consensus was, why was this cutscene, the really, really important cutscene, not the end of Lightfall? Like, why didn't we do something to trigger some sort of explanation where this cutscene appeared and we learned all of this stuff at the end of Lightfall? That would have been so impactful. And even if this was, planned for Season of the Deep, and Asha was always going to be the one to tell us, and like it kind of makes sense that Asha would tell us, because like who else is going to tell us, I guess. I don't know. I feel like you could have had Osiris regain Savathun memories or something, because she knows everything. But it's not as impactful when you put the most important cutscene of the series, something that should have ended the last expansion, at like week 5 of a seasonal story in the following season. Like, I don't think that worked. Even if that was the plan, I don't think that was a good plan, personally. Okay. The Veil Containment as a key for shattering Reservoir, which continues the examination of the cosmic thingamajig called the Veil, and hints at a lot of stuff to come for seasons and expansions. He says this trail of breadcrumbs is a way we're experimenting with new narrative delivery systems to tell different kinds of stories and shake things up a bit from where people are inspecting. Why wasn't this in Lightfall? That's a good question. I think it goes to the intention that it always was from the start, expected there would be mysteries unresolved at the end of Lightfall. And the seasonal stories would expand on them and deliver the answers, and that would be how the narrative progression would go. I think what you're seeing now, the answers that are coming out of the questions that were raised here are being answered, is the pay-up to the set-off that was in Lightfall. I sort of just explained what I feel about that, and I don't think your big finale reveals should be midway through the following season instead of at your actual expansion. But usually our expansions are kind of the capstone of a year of seasons, and like I said before, there was a middle piece instead. This was a middle piece instead. It was a capstone of what we led up to in Season of the Seraph, and it was also starting something that different that tapered off into the new year. This sort of reinforces the idea that Lightfall's not really a traditional expansion in the sense of things. Like, very much they did not have Lightfall. That did not exist originally. It was added once they realized they quote unquote wanted like additional time or an additional year to finish off the Light and Darkness saga. So it does sort of make sense that it would be a middle piece instead of its own giant thing. I just still think there were ways to deliver that still did not necessarily. Yeah, I just don't think you should have you should need the next season to explain the most important parts of the expansion itself. I think you can add additional context and additional reveals, and I think there were certainly additional mysteries that Lightfall brought up that did not need to all be explained, but like fundamental things like what is the veil, that probably should have been at least somewhat clear by the end of Lightfall, and I don't think it was. So we aren't done giving answers and reveals in the seasonal content leading up to the final shape either. There are definitely more things that are going to be touched upon that have come out of Lightfall, and there are more things that have come out of Veil containment activity. Those answers are coming. They're in there, and like Robert was saying, it's kind of that structure, the down ramp, and then onto the on ramp into final shape. Okay, so that's interesting because one thing that keeps coming up in Veil containment, it's like a combination. It's like sort of the origins of Neomuna, because we know Neomuna's whatever, the whole city, like people in stasis, all of that stuff is powered by the Veil. We know that they did something with like dead exos and the Veil and like combining that tech. I think that may have been what started Neomuna, which Meister Nurse's wife is like freaking out about and like doesn't think it's good. And we sort of learned that the Cloudstrider tech was like developed using all this, and so Cloudstriders are technically part Vex because they're using Veil infused Vex tech to make this stuff. They also have like a version of Siva sort of that is not evil per se, but I think it might be influenced by Veil stuff. So this is all really interesting. So I feel like we could get a Neomuna Exo Cloudstrider focused season, maybe not next season if that's just Savathûn stuff, but if they're specifically saying that additional story beats and seasonal stuff is going to come out of Veil containment, first, I very much recommend that you go listen to the Veil containment lore. I guess you can do it on YouTube if you don't want to just go into the game and sit there, but that seems very, very important now. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and if this is planned for future seasonal stuff, then the radio messages were the plan the whole time, and it's just sort of an odd delivery mechanism of that. But I do like it. I always like the radio messages they do, and these ones in particular do seem to be revealing some really interesting stuff. So go listen to those if you haven't. I like the commentary from the writer here, which sounds like something I would have said. This is broadly encouraging stuff, but it does reflect what feels like one of Lightfall's biggest problems, player expectations. As they fall up to the Witch Queen, a straightforward and undeniable narrative triumph, the Lightfall experiment just didn't land well. I maintain that its narrative was disjointed and too anemic no matter the intent, and I don't fully buy into the 80s action movie motif that was brought up again in this interview. But Season of the Deep has delivered some impactful and exciting moments about major players in the plot. Though things are picking up, I can't help but wish some of the stuff was in Lightfall itself. That is probably exactly the paragraph I would have written, Austin. So good job. I very much agree with that. He's saying that they should have said ahead of time that they were going to do something narratively different, and it wouldn't make sense at first. I don't know. I mean, Bungie's kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with that. So if they said that, everyone would have given them crap for that, and if they didn't, people gave them crap anyway. So, I don't think it worked. I don't think a lot of things about Lightfall's narrative worked, and yet, I'm certainly curious what they're saying about how things are going to be developed. I think the reveals they have done about the Veil since Lightfall are more interesting than anything we learned about the Veil in Lightfall itself. And I maintain that the cutscene should have been at the end of Lightfall, but. It's interesting to hear their own thoughts on this. It's a lot of the writers. It's Tom, who's like in charge of seasons and things. So this Lightfall was this middle piece that we just don't really ever get from expansion, so that kind of put it in a pretty awkward place. So I get why things were a little odd here, but yeah, it's interesting to read all this. So go click on the article because I promise I would be nice and send people their way for clicks, or else I'm being a hypocrite. Yeah, good piece. Interviews are hard. Interviews are hard to transcribe and like get interesting information out of. So good job to all the guys, girls who did this with Bungie. Roundtable interviews are particularly hard because you maybe get a chance to like ask one question, then you have to transcribe like an hour worth of answers and parse it down into like 5 good quotes or something. So a lot of props. I only took 15 minutes to make this video, so I'm slacking. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.